different cost forecasting formulas or methods that gave you different results? Hello, I am SHOHREH GHORBANI. I'm the founder and director of Project Control Academy. Just like many of you, I came across different cost forecasting formulas or methods. Different companies were using different techniques for forecasting their cost. Different clients requested different formulas or methods for cost forecasting, and even different cost control tools were using different formulas to come up with the cost forecast. And regardless of the formulas or method used, the same formula was used throughout the project lifecycle for forecasting cost. Now, with different results that you get depending on what formula you use for forecasting your cost, the question is what cost forecasting formula you should use at different stages of your project. Should you use the same formula throughout the project lifecycle? If not, what formula or method you have to use for forecasting your cost more accurately at different stages of the project. And this is what I'm going to cover in today's presentation. I'm going to show you different cost forecasting formulas that you can use at various stages of your project. And the focus of this presentation is on cost performance based forecasting methods using earned value management. So let's better understand what we are trying to forecast here. So if this is my project using earned value management, using the three key elements of earned value, planned value, and actual cost, what we are trying to estimate is estimated cost at completion, or EAC. So that's what we are trying to estimate and come up with here. But my question for you is what formula you have used. If you were using earned value management for forecasting your cost at completion, what formula you have been using to come up with your EAC or ETC, estimate to complete or estimate at completion. Well, there's a universal formula that you can use for EAC, and that's basically your estimate at completion is the money that you have already spent, or your actual cost, plus the money that you need to spend for finishing the project, or estimate to complete. So that's a very simple formula, that's universal formula. But now the question mark is how you can calculate ETC, because you already have your actual cost from your financial system. Now the question is how I can calculate my estimate to complete. I have already went into the depth of this formula and came up with the ETC formula for you in another video. So make sure you check that out. The title of that video is How to Forecast the Cost at Completion of a Project, where I showed you why your EAC formula is this. And it might look complicated by just looking at it, but I went into the depth of it and showed you exactly piece by piece why we can come up with a formula like that for your estimate at completion, which is basically your actual cost plus your estimate to complete, which is your budget minus earn, which is your true remaining dollar work left to be done, and by considering the performance factor, factoring your projected performance factor in there. But what I did uncover in the previous video was what that projected performance factor is. So the question is, I have all the other components here for this calculation, but how can I come up, or how can I forecast my performance to come up with the right or accurate EAC, or estimate at completion, for my project? And that's what I'm going to cover today for you. So the projected performance factor can be different things, like it can be cost performance index, schedule performance index, combination of those. But let's start by examining the cost performance index as your projected performance factor for calculating your forecast. So if my projected performance factor is CPI, and if I put CPI into that equation, that gives me this. my estimate at completion is basically my budget over CPI. And if you don't believe me, just replace CPI with earned value over actual cost, do that equation and come up with that. Just you can pause this video or this recording and do this calculation and see if you can drive to the same equation. But believe me, that's going to be the right equation for that. So, so when you have your projected performance factor equal to your CPI, that's going to be your formula for forecasting your cost at completion. Is it the formula that you have been using for forecasting your costs in your projects? Is it something that you're familiar with? And this is very popular, by the way, and I'm sure most of you have used this formula for forecasting your cost at completion. But my question for you is, if you have been using this formula, have you used this throughout the project lifecycle from the beginning to the end of your project? And if your answer is yes, I'm sorry to say that most people make that mistake of using the same formula throughout the project lifecycle. But you might question, what's wrong with that? You know, what's wrong with using this formula from the beginning of my project to the end? This is an earned value formula, right, for prediction of my cost. So what's wrong with that? So let me ask you another question. Is this safe to use this formula early in your project, at the beginning of your project, when you're just starting your project? Okay, let me answer these questions by giving you a real life project based on my own experience on a project I was involved in. In a project that I was involved in, and client was very sensitive to our cost forecast and really wanted to have an accurate forecast for the cost estimate, they mandated this formula for forecasting the cost in all the service agreement that we had with them and as part of the project control plan that they issued for us. So that was something that they requested us to use for coming up with the cost forecast. And we said, okay, we will use that in the project. But the project that we were working on was a really complex project. We were blasting off mountains and putting a refinery on that. And it was a very complicated engineering work that we have not done before. So it was new to us, and it was a learning curve associated with that. So what happened was, at the beginning of the project, we were on the learning curve. We were trying to understand the scope and understand how we can really build this monster. So we didn't claim that much progress. So our CPI, or cost performance index, was quite low. In a reporting cycle, it was, I think, 0.7 or something, and it kept dropping down in every reporting cycle. So our CPI kept coming down in every reporting cycle because we were not really delivering anything tangible. We were still figuring out the scope and, you know, how to continue with this project. So what happened a couple of months, in a couple of reports that we issued, our forecast showed, using this formula, showed 8 million as a forecast for a $6 million project. So we were showing client that we need 2 million extra for this project. We just started like 2 months or 1 month. I don't remember exactly how long we have been in that project, but it was early on. It was below 20% progress that we had on that project. And then that was the time that client came back to us with a big question mark. You are telling me that I need 2 million extra to finish this project, and you just started this project. So what's going on? And the answer was simple. That's the formula you mandated us to use for cost forecasting. But anyways, they were flexible after that. We had discussions with them. We went over the agreement, and we said we don't agree with what you mandated for us in that plan. And we changed that with the agreement with them, and then we came up with a more accurate forecast in the upcoming reporting cycles. And the first thing we did was we didn't take into consideration the performance factor at the early stages of our project, because, as I said, CPI was so low and it was like bumping up our estimate, which was not accurate. So based on this real life example that I brought for you, I would like to make you aware of several points based on my own learning on that project. The first point that I would like to address here is you may not need to really factor your performance into your cost estimate, I mean your EAC formula, early on in your project. And by early, I mean around 20 to 25%, like up to that point in your project, when you have the physical progress up to 20 to 30% progress, it might be safe to use other formulas and not use the performance factor in there. And do you know why? Well, I kind of covered that for you because at the early stages of our project, if this is something new that we are doing and we are not experiencing that much of changes and change orders in the project, then, you know, it's safe to use either of these two formulas that I'm going to show you. So either my estimate to complete would be basically my budget minus my earned value, or basically what's left to be done in the project. Or also you can use this, but with some caution, budget minus actual cost. For this, because it just shows you the remaining money that's left in your pocket, probably it's safe to use this formula very early on your project, probably the first, second, or third reporting cycle in your project, that you don't see that much of deviation, everything is according to the plan, and that would be safe to use this formula really early on. But for the other one, you can use that up to 20 to 30% progress up to that point. But again, it's nothing set in the stone. You have to watch your project and your performance and how it's going. But based on my own experience in different projects, I found that it's safe to use this formula early on in your project and not consider the performance factor in your forecast. Now, the question is, okay, how about after this point? What would be my projected performance factor after that? I need to consider my performance, right? And that's right. So another point I would like you to consider here is, based on that example, is you shouldn't use your EAC formula really blindly. And for example, the one I showed you was, we were using CPI throughout the project from the beginning to up to that point that we faced the issue. So you shouldn't use that really blindly, and you have to come up with a wise selection of your predicted performance factor in your EAC formula. So you might question, but what is that predicted performance factor? What should I put in that formula? That's a good question. According to PMI practice standard for earned value management, the use of this formula, you can see they come up with different formulas for your estimate at completion or your forecast for your cost, depending on the assumption that you make, or I would like to say that depending on your trends, on your performance, on the project performance trend. So depending on how your project performance is, if you draw your CPI curve or SPI curve, how you are performing so far in your project, you have to do some trend analysis to make sure that you come up with the right projection for your performance in the next reporting cycle. For example, if you can predict that my future performance would be the same as the past performance, then that would be safe to use the second one here that I just showed you. And this is something that most of us use blindly without any consideration. So for example, if I draw my trend graph for cumulative CPI and I see it's kind of steady, you can see if I can draw a line, I can draw a line easily for my cumulative CPI. So it doesn't have that much of fluctuations period to period. So for this example, I can easily assume that my future performance would be the same as my past performance. So I can easily assume that CPI cumulative for my projected performance factor. But let's say you are working on a project that the last 3 months were kind of steady in terms of your performance. So in that case, you can use this one, average CPI in the last 3 months. Or let's say you are kind of behind in your project and you want to factor your scheduled performance into the equation. So then in that case, you can use either of these two methods by combining your CPI and SPI into your forecasting equation. So the bottom line is all of this, the usage of different formulas for your forecast, it all depends on the trends and the performance and how you can predict what's going to happen in the next report and the report after that. And no matter what formula you're using, make sure that you validate your forecast with your control account manager at the end of the day. So although EVM is very powerful, but again, you have to make sure that you check it with, you check the result of your forecast with the control account managers and make sure that that's the right forecast that makes sense. Another point I would like to address is at the end of your project, let's say after 85-90% progress in your project, one of the best methods for forecasting is manual forecast. What I mean by that? It means that toward the end of the project, simply go to your control account managers and ask, okay, based on the deliverables that are left to be done, how much more money you need? And come up with a manual ETC or estimate to complete. That's simple. And sometimes, to be honest with you, even the best EVM forecasting might not work at this stage of the project, especially if you kind of exceeded your budget or ran out of budget. In such cases, the EVM formulas would be really weird, would not work for you. So that's why at such stages, such late stages of your project, the best method is going to each control account manager and ask for the forecast. So these were the 3 considerations that I wanted you to take into account next time that you are checking your EAC formula and you want to come up with an accurate forecast for your project. Now you might question, okay, that's fine, I will validate my forecast with the control account managers, but is there any metric or any means that I can also assess the accuracy of my forecast? The good news is, yes, there is. In fact, there is a metric in earned value management called TCPI, or True Complete Performance Index, that can help you assess the accuracy of your forecast. And I'm going to cover that in more details in the next episode of Project Control Mastery. So if you're interested, make sure that you check that out. So in summary, the accuracy of your cost forecast highly depends on your past project performance trends and what's happening in your project and the projected performance factor that you're going to consider in your EAC formula for the remainder of the project. Make sure that you don't use your EAC formula blindly throughout the project life cycle. As I showed you, you try to use it wisely and use different formulas and methods according to what stage you are in your project. And in case you are interested to have an in-depth training on earned value management, I highly encourage you to check 2 of our great training programs on earned value management. Both of them are available online and you can take them at your own pace and the convenience of your home. One is the Essentials of Earned Value Management training, which is a very comprehensive training that gives you all the foundation that you need for EVM, and another one is the advanced training on earned value management. It's called Mastering EVM for Project Success. It's for those who have the basic understanding of EVM and would like to have a practical experience of how to implement EVM on a project. That course walks you through a case study step by step from the beginning to the end and help you analyze EVM and implement EVM on that sample project. So if this is of interest to you, make sure that you check projectcontrolacademy.com and check out those 2 courses. So I hope this training added value to you. I hope you've learned something new out of today's session. And if you have any question, make sure you jot them down below. And if you have any comment, I'm really welcoming your comments and engagement in the community. So please leave your comments and questions down below. And if you like this training, please hit the like button and also share it with your connections or co-workers. Until the next episode of Project Control Mastery, where I'm going to open up the concept of TCPI for you and show you how to assess the accuracy of your cost forecast, do your best in everything that you do, my friend, and make a difference.